What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. So I'm currently working on a pretty high-end custom water-cooled build inside of the new Phanteks Evolv X. Now, some of you may have seen I have done some builds previously. I did a couple in the original Phanteks Evolv, which I thought was a great case. And when we were kind of going over our options for this build, this case came up because we were mostly looking for a mid-sized tower that would hold two 360 millimeter radiators. So ultimately we chose this one. Now there's a lot of differences between the new Evolv X and the original Evolv. So I figured I would go ahead and take the opportunity here, since I'm in the middle of the build, to maybe point out some of the things that I like and don't like about this case, and maybe help some of you out that are considering using this case for a water-cooled project. Now, keep in mind, this is not meant to be a full-on review. This case has been out for a while. There's already some good reviews out there. This is just more or less my opinions on the case, and also just kind of pointing out some of the things about the interior of the case that may be important to you when it comes to fitting your components in the case. I would say overall, as far as the look of the case and the build quality, it's a great case. I think it's a good option for anyone that wants to do a nice system. I think it's going to be worth your while if you like the looks of the case, but there are a whole slew of things about this case that I think are just absolutely ridiculous and unnecessary. So it's going to sound like I'm bashing this case, and it's more of a knock on Phanteks than it is on the case itself. Like I said, I don't want to discourage any of you from using the case. If there's anything about it that I point out that you don't like, then by all means, stay away from it. But for those of you that already have the case or are considering it, I think it's great. So don't get butthurt if you don't like some of the things that I have to say about it. So we'll start off here with a quick little overview of how all the components sort of fit into the case. Now, as you can see, I've got the 360 on the top as well as the front. These are the EK 360PE. So these measure at like 37 millimeters thick. So as you can see, they fit nicely with just a little bit of room to spare. I could move this radiator down just a tad bit, but good news is they fit. I probably wouldn't try to go any thicker than this up top if you're going with the 360. If you're only going with a 240, you've got a lot more room to work with. You could fit a fat boy in there if you wanted to. And then of course you do have more room in the front to go with something a little bit deeper. However, keep in mind, now these are reference cards, and then this is the radiator here. So there's not a whole ton of room to work with as far as still being able to fit a reservoir vertically like I plan on doing. So just keep that in mind. And then you also have to consider, if you're going to run your cables down through this stupid hole here, that would be fine. I'm not going to do that. I'm actually going to use this as a pass-through for some of my tubing, because when you do have the two 360s in here, there's really not a whole lot of flexibility as far as how you can do your tubing runs. Granted, I'm cramming a lot in here with the two graphics cards. So if you were only doing a single graphics card, in which case I would recommend only doing a 240 up top, you're going to have a lot more room to play with. So I guess the good news is that it works. If you want a case that will fit dual 360s, you can do that in here, and you will still have room for your other components. However, it's going to be somewhat of a tight fit. I am going to have just barely enough room to get back up behind this radiator for a fill port. I've yet to do that, but I think we're going to be okay. I would say overall, I don't like the redesign of the interior compared to the original Phanteks Evolv. I hate the stupid little panels back here. I basically hate all the little gimmicks about this case. I liked how the original one had a much larger cutout here, so it was easier to run tubing and that sort of thing. I like the look of this shroud, the RGB little light strip here. I don't see the point of having a cutout for the power supply. I just don't really know of anyone that cares about showing off their power supply, usually at least. So, although I did actually kind of do that in one of my builds, but anyway, it's still, I just don't see the point of it. But yeah, other than that, that pretty much sums up everything I have to say about at least the inside of the front of the case. I'll flip it around and we can take a look at the back, and then I'll talk about some of the other components as well. Okay, so when we look at the back side of the case, this is where I really have a lot of complaints about this case. First of all, there is about 3/4 of an inch depth here to work with as far as cable management goes. That's less than 20 millimeters. And as you can see, you may know that this case has those crazy metal panels that fold out from the back here, which I don't see how anyone would be able to mount all of those SSDs or whatever the heck they want you to do with those stupid panels and still be able to cable manage. I'm going to be doing all custom cables, and I think I'm still going to have a little bit of a hard time getting everything to manage well. They could have easily just added a little bit more depth. Heck, they could have taken a slight amount of depth away from the front side of the case and added it to the back if they didn't want to, increase the overall side of the case. But for a case like this, I'm honestly shocked at how little room it has in the back for cable management, especially because the case comes with tons of crazy cords that connect to all of their RGB and fan splitters. This is another complaint I have too. They've got, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 4 pins, which is just kind of a weird number. I don't know why they still include 3-pin on here. Like, you can still plug a 3-pin fan into a 4-pin header. I would much rather them have had all 4 pins to give you more flexibility, especially when you're doing water cooling and mounting radiators. So I appreciate the inclusion of a fan splitter, but it's just another one of those things where they kind of just didn't execute it very well. So, and then my other complaint is this stupid basement here. It's too shallow. You cannot fit here. I've got 3 different options of pumps here, but make a long story short, a D5 pump is just, if it's going to go in there, it's going to be such a tight fit that it's not even worth messing with. I'm just going to end up going with a DDC pump. Obviously, if you mount your pump to your reservoir above the basement, it's not really that big a deal. But if you want to put your pump in the basement, just keep in mind that if you plan on using a D5, it's either not going to fit or it's going to be such a tight fit that it's going to be a pain in the butt to work with. So, because obviously you put a pump down here, you still have to have room for tubing and then also cables for your power supply. So again, if they'd have made this basement just a little bit taller, kind of like how it is in the Dark Base 700, it's got a really nice size basement. Granted, it's a bigger case, but it's just a lot more flexible as far as being able to mount components underneath. But aside from that, just a lot more crap in the back that I've removed. I probably still will keep removing stuff because it's just a bunch of junk that takes up space that I just don't really think is necessary. So yeah, I would say as far as the back side of the case goes, this is probably one of the worst that I've seen as far as having room for cable management and flexibility. I think I instantly took out those metal trays because those just take up a huge amount of space, and I don't know how in the world, unless you just have an extremely basic system, how you're going to be able to have those back here. I guess if you didn't have water cooling and you had all the extra room to shove cables under here, you might be able to get that to work, but in this type of setup, it's just it's not going to work for me. So I do want to touch on a couple other things that have to do with the outside of the case. So as far as the outer panels go, I'm glad that they decided to include much larger vents this time around in the top panel. So that was obviously one of the main complaints about the original Phanteks Evolv was the airflow. So I think they've probably solved that issue, and there is a larger gap in the front for the front panel. But these doors here, this is probably one of the dumbest features I have ever seen on any case. These things are insanely heavy. First of all, let's just talk about how stupid the idea of a swing open door is, especially on a case this size. Like, almost nobody is going to have space to swing open this big ass door on their case to get inside. I just, I understand that you get a nice seamless look on the outside because you don't have any thumb screws, but both Lee & Lee and Fractal have come up with really elegant solutions for a tempered glass side panel without having to use thumb screws. But, they've got these metal brackets on the front that just add even more weight. I mean, these things are, it adds, I don't even know. I probably should have weighed these things so I could have told you guys how heavy they are, but you're just going to have to trust me. I mean, especially, when they're on the case, I'm shocked at how much weight these things add. So, yeah, I think just the door idea, just in general, I mean, they look really nice, but it's just a terrible implementation of, this concept here. On my micro ATX version of the Evolv that had the swing open door, first of all, it was much smaller. I didn't mind. I liked the magnets on the front. The doors were much lighter. But again, I don't in general think that swing open doors is the way to go. I think it's just not practical. So I don't know. Maybe they're just trying to be unique. I think that's the overall sort of takeaway from this case, is that the designers just tried to add so many gimmicky little options to this case, and in my opinion, they just, I don't know. I guess I'm more of a fan of Fractal's sort of simplified approach to a case. They just only focus on things that make sense. But this is a really nice looking case, and it's well made. So as much as it sounds like I'm bashing this thing, I think it's still, a nice case, and anyone that would want to build in it, as long as you kind of understand what to look out for and what you're getting yourself into, I think it's not a bad choice. I just think Phanteks, I don't know, they need to have better think tanks, or maybe speak to people that actually build in these cases before they produce them, because I would say this is pretty much a bust as far as all their stupid little features. They could have just left all of that crap off of this case as far as I'm concerned. But again, that's just my opinion, so take it with a grain of salt. Anyway, if you guys have any questions about this case in general, feel free to leave a comment. I will do my best to respond. But other than that, yeah, I don't think I have anything else to say. So have a nice day, and I will see you guys in the next video.